Follow your passion is dangerous advice. That is the basic premise of this book that I just read. So good they can't ignore you. Why skills trump passion in the quest for work that you love. So the reason I wanted to read this book, or it came across my horizon, is it's kind of the opposite of what I often recommend, and kind of the hypothesis that I follow, which is to, tune in, get clear on your values, get clear on the things that bring you joy, and then build from that space, which is basically follow your passion in life. This book is basically completely debunking that and brings some pretty good examples, but I just finished reading it and I wanted to read it just to see the opposing point of view and the opposing viewpoint to kind of what I recommend most often. So the essence of this book is that why is following your passion bad advice is that passion alone is not what actually brings the deepest fulfillment and the deepest engagement. What this is saying is that rather than following your passion, you're better off to develop skills and expertise in any given field that the marketplace values and that is appreciated. And as that we develop what they call career capital, as you develop career capital and expertise in something, that is actually what brings the most fulfillment and passion, is we start to fall in love with the things that we're good at, regardless of what it is. And that the only way to develop that level of craftsmanship and expertise is through diligent long-term practice for prolonged periods. And as we do that, the second kind of third component is that as you develop career capital, and regardless of what you do, you end up having more autonomy and control over what you do, over your creative process. Whether you're working for a company and you become invaluable to them and they have to give you more control, or you're an entrepreneur and just having more control over your life and your outcome. Whereas when you have low levels of skill and expertise in anything is when you have the least amount of control creatively and anything else, and you're actually the most managed, right? You have to be told what to do, which is the least fulfilling way to live your life. So what this is arguing is that follow your passion alone is not what creates passion, and that it actually creates dissatisfaction for many people by giving that advice, because it's saying that, like, unless it's exactly the thing you're the most passionate about, like, you're not going to be able to have the deep fulfillment that you want. And especially for young people today, it's kind of, it makes a point of, like, saying that, like, the whole theory or philosophy of follow your passion really emerged in the 1980s. And that's about around the same time when job satisfaction rates really started to decline. When I think of even my parents' generation or generations past, they didn't really ask questions like that, like, what am I passionate about and who am I, and all these kinds of questions. They just picked a career and did it for long periods, and they got really good at what they were doing. But as soon as you start asking, what am I passionate about? And it starts to beg to question, what am I doing right now is not directly my passion. So it almost makes you unhappier by asking the question of, what am I passionate about, and how am I going to be happy? It's like the question alone of I want to be happy makes the reality of the present moment, like, that means it implies that you're not happy. And it's kind of a similar thing with passion. By focusing on passion, we actually live less passionately. So a good example they actually use in the book that I really appreciated was Steve Jobs, who's someone that most of us know and like his products, which is he's the founder of Apple Computers. But Steve Jobs, if you don't know his story, he gave a speech at Stanford at one point late in his career, after he had cancer for the first time. But in his speech, he basically says, like, figure out what you love to do and don't ever settle until you're doing what you love to do. And it's essentially the advice: follow your passion, find out what you love, and then do that, and don't ever settle. In the book, it kind of criticizes him, though, in the sense that he didn't really do his own advice. Like, had he given the advice to himself back when he was a kid, he never would have found his way to his passion for technology. So if you don't know Steve's story, he was actually kind of a confused and undirected young man in university. He dropped out. He was basically a hippie with no money and didn't know what he wanted to do. And it was actually by chance that he made his way into technology, which later became a passion. But at the time when he was in university, he was actually kind of just like this philosophical hippie guy that was, playing around with a lot of plant medicines and things like LSD. And he was really into like Eastern philosophy and mysticism, and more so like on the yogic path. So if you were to advise Steve to follow his passion at that time, like he really should have gone into being a yoga instructor or being in the philosophical field more purely, even though he applied those skills later in his career, which is what Apple ended up becoming, right? It's an incredible evolution, and a lot of that philosophical inquiry came into play during the creation of Apple. But at the time, if you had given Steve the advice to follow your passion, he would not have gone into technology because Steve had no passion for technology. What really happened is that he had a friend named Steve Wozniak, and Steve was broke, and Wozniak was an incredibly intelligent engineer and he developed a circuit board which had monetary value, and Steve offered to like go and basically do the distribution, and he sold to make some sales so that he can make a little bit of money. I think it was like $1,000 or a couple $1,000. So it was really in pursuit of some money to just live your day-to-day life that Steve stumbled into like technology. And what turned out to be a huge opportunity, Steve ended up becoming the leader of that movement, and his skills and his charisma ended up being invaluable. But he wouldn't have known that had he just followed his passion and stuck with it. What brought him is some incredible opportunity took him into this field, and it blew up. And then that's when Steve really started to take off and developed these rare and valuable skills called career capital. And then the passion for technology and innovation really grew and developed from there. So that's kind of why the criticism they have is that you don't know what life is going to have in store for you, and trying to follow your passion is not necessarily the most important thing to do. It's really just engaging fully with the things that you have right in front of you and developing skills and practicing. And that's what brings the deep joy. And as we develop that craftsmanship and that expertise, we start to develop passion, and we start to gain control and autonomy over what we do. I can relate to this a lot when I really start thinking about my own life and how the theories of this book apply. One of the things I've been doing for, I guess, 15 years now is when I was in university, like the first couple, like right at the start of university, I started painting houses, and I was a house painter. I ran a crew of 2 or 3 people, and I would lead the team, and we'd paint, 20 or 30 houses every summer. But even still today, I now run and own and operate a franchise company for painting franchises, where I now have I coach people and I develop the systems and all these things. But I know this industry like the back of my hand now. And even though deep down I know like it's not my life calling, it's not my passion, at some level there's a lot of joy and I have for it because I just know it so well. And when people do come to me, sometimes people come to me for coaching to help them build their home service companies. And I get excited because I can totally teach that. I can totally help people with building that particular type of business so effectively. So there is a level of passion underneath it all, even though I know it's not like deeply aligned with my values in the highest sense. I have a lot of career capital and freedom and autonomy within that whole business. And actually the freedom and autonomy I get from that business is what allows me to do a lot of the things and the startup stuff I did with Foundations here and buying film equipment and all these things. And again, even with the film, like right now I'm filming stuff and I'm getting into this new skill, and I'm starting to really enjoy the essence of filmmaking, which is something I wasn't setting out to follow my passion for filmmaking. I'm just starting to gain interest as I get more and more knowledge, as I acquire more knowledge around filmmaking and video editing and lighting and like sound and all these things. So that is kind of the premise of this book, is that don't follow your passion. They're saying it's not good advice. You're better off to actually just really engage in something and start developing rare and valuable skills regardless of what you do. That's not actually important. It's almost the same as like why a drug dealer might love what he does. Or if anyone's ever seen that movie Breaking Bad, the TV show Breaking Bad, Walter White loves distributing and manufacturing crystal meth. Because he was good at what he did. That's what the final thing is that he said at the end of the series. I'm not saying go and distribute that kind of stuff. I think there is this balance, and I think that's my biggest takeaway, is that there's a balance between the advice of following your passion and not worrying about it too much, and just go to develop rare and valuable skills in whatever life is throwing at you. Something that I just read another book before this book called Mastery, and both books, they both really, really harp on one main thing though, which is regardless of what you do in life, what you select to be a master of or to develop career capital, is how they say it in this book. Practice is a pillar in both books, is that it's the people who really cultivate deep practices with whatever it is they're doing who end up deriving the most fulfillment. And I think that is a really big takeaway, is just it's the practice, the enjoyment of the actual process and the practice of skill development where people derive purpose, passion, and a lot of fulfillment. So that's my takeaway. Have a read for yourself. I also have a book review on Mastery, which is in another video. I'll put the link in the description below, and I recommend the read. It's a pretty easy read. And I'm glad I read it to get the opposing viewpoint to my theory of follow your passion.